Eighth grade. Coronavirus is making me very sensitive to people coughing and sneezing near me. And I know it's not like a great thing, for me to be flinching whenever someone sneezes in my general direction at the store or something like that. Um, but that's just the reality of the situation. My brother has a friend who owns a farm, and um, I was picking something up from them the other day, and he has alpacas. And um, I'm walking by his line of alpacas. They're all up at the feeding trough, and one of them spits on me. And I thought it was the end of the world. It felt like the alpaca lips. Oh, man. Yeah, there's a lot of like doomsday prophets and prophecies about the end of the world. Um, and when a deaf or a mute prophet talks about the end of the world, it's a real sign of the apocalypse. Oh man, I'm going to be making end of the world jokes like there's no tomorrow. Uh, Toilet paper may run out. My jokes will not. Okay. Chapter 5 of 1 John. So now John is talking about caritas and divine filiation, and he's going to connect the two of them together. He's going to say why you can't have one without the other. Everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ is a child of God, and everyone who loves the parent loves the child. By this we know that we love the children of God when we love God and obey his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. So John is saying, if you love God, you have to love everyone born of God, right? And because Christians are God's children by virtue of divine filiation, this means you can't separate caritas from divine filiation, right? So everyone who is baptized is a child of God. And John is saying, if you love God, that means you also have to love God's children. So therefore, you have to love your fellow Christians. John also explains how we love God, right? How does caritas work? So John says, because we're children of God, because of divine filiation, we actually have the graces given to us by God that are necessary to keep his commandments in spite of temptation. So the way we love God is by keeping his commandments. People who keep God's commandments do so out of love of God. People who break God's commandments fail to love God, right? They make excuses like, oh, this is a stupid commandment. Well, the commandment comes from God, so it's not stupid, right? Or they say, there are other extenuating circumstances that cause them to not be able to keep God's commandments. Right? And John's saying, nope, God always gives you the grace you need to keep his commandments. So caritas, divine filiation go together. Okay. This is he who came by water and by blood, Jesus Christ, not with the water only, but with the water and the blood. So on this slide, I've included the Divine Mercy image. This comes from the Diary of St. Faustina and the Visions of St. Faustina. She was a very well-known Catholic visionary and mystic who received numerous apparitions, numerous visions of Christ, as well as visions of hell. These are private revelations, so Catholics are not required to pay any attention to these, but you'll see the Divine Mercy image in a lot of churches. In fact, Our Lady of Lourdes has a Divine Mercy image. I think almost all churches probably have one somewhere, right? So that's what this image is. It's the Divine Mercy image. And it is connected to what happens in the Passion narratives when Jesus is pierced while on the cross and water and blood pour out. And it's also connected to what John says. This is he who came by water and by blood, right? Water and blood together. So what is the purpose of talking about water and blood here? Well, they're obviously symbolic, right? So what does water symbolize? Water symbolizes baptism. Water also symbolizes Christ's earthly baptism by John the Baptist. So it symbolizes the sacrament of baptism, but also when Christ himself was baptized by John the Baptist, which remember was not a sacramental baptism. Water also represents Christ's divine nature. Blood symbolizes something else. Blood symbolizes the Eucharist, because we have the precious blood in the holy sacrifice of the Mass. Blood, of course, also symbolizes Christ's death and therefore his human nature. Right? Now, sacraments are invisible signs, are visible signs of invisible realities, right? So all of these interpretations, right, whether it's about Christ's divine or human natures or about sacraments, all of these fit together. Because remember, the sacraments themselves are also symbols, they're signs, right? So blood and water are present in the Gospels, in the Passion narrative, when the soldier pierces Christ's side and blood and water pour out. So blood and water are a direct affront to the Cerinthian heresy. Remember, the Cerinthians believe that Christ's human nature, that Jesus, the carpenter, the son of the carpenter, was separate from the second person of the Trinity, right? That they came together at his baptism and that they separated at his crucifixion, right? Well, when Christ's side is pierced and blood and water come out together, that shows that Christ's human nature and his divine nature are still united, okay? So John talks about this to reject the Cerinthians once again, right? Now, quick note about the piercing of Christ's side on the cross. A lot of people wonder why the soldier pierced Jesus on the right side if his heart is on the left, right? For example, in this Divine Mercy image, the red light and the white light, which are symbolic of the blood and the water, they're coming directly out of Jesus's heart. But the piercing happens on his right side. So why is that? Why would the piercing be here, but here in this image, it's coming out of his heart? Well, it's because when the soldier pierced Jesus' right side, the lance, the spear, actually went through the ribs, right, all the way to the heart. Right? So he wasn't just like poked in the side. He was stabbed, and the spear went all the way through the rib. You can't really see myself pointing on the screen. So it went through his rib here, went all the way, and then punctured his heart. Now, when you're crucified, what happens is your heart actually fills with blood, and then there's a sac around your heart that fills up with fluid as well, right? So the sac around the heart filled up with water and other bodily fluids, with the heart itself filled with blood. So when the spear came through and it pierced the heart, it also pierced the sac around the heart, which is kind of like a water balloon that popped. And so that's why all this blood and water burst forth from Jesus' side, right? So here in this image, the fact that the red light and the blue light or white light that are coming out represent the blood and the water is not contradictory to Jesus being pierced in the side. Also, I don't know a whole lot about the Divine Mercy image, but I will tell you that this is based on a vision that St. Faustina had. And in this vision, she was told to have a painter create this image, right? And so this is it's kind of like a police sketch sort of thing where you have a witness trying to vividly describe what he or she saw when a crime was committed, right? And the sketch artist tries to sketch it out. Well, the same thing is happening here. There's a painter who's trying to, who's listening to what St. Faustina is saying and trying to be as detailed as possible in how he depicts the image. Right? And apparently St. Faustina said this image is pretty close to what she saw. All right. Okay, I'm going to have to make a later video on the rest of chapter 5, so I'll stop here.